What am I saying?
Hi, farm friends.
Hi, farm friends. Welcome to Haven Acres.
Wait, stop.
Oh,
do it again when I'm not like telling you what to say.
Oh. I thought you could edit that out, no?
Not when you talk so fast like that.
Oh. Hey, farm friends. Welcome to Haven Acres. I'm Jesse.
And I'm Stacy. Hey, can you do us a favor and hit the thumbs up or the thumbs down if that makes you happy, and subscribe to our channel right now?
Well,
should we wait?
We could wait, but they haven't seen the video yet, so how could they go a thumbs up or down? Just subscribe right now. We'll wait.
Okay, go ahead. I've had these dry beans sitting on our shelf for some time. My intention was to do a class on canning them. However, I think today's the day, and I am just going to get some of these beans canned up and into the pantry in a different way. When you use rice or dried beans or dried peas, you always want to wash them off just in cold water really well. Just kind of run cold water over them, stir them around with your hands. You want to get any dust or dirt or pieces of like little pieces of wood or anything that doesn't belong in there. You really want to get that out. As you can see, I start with nice, fresh, clean water, and it turns a little dingy. Had I not washed those beans, we would be eating any of that dirt or dust that's in there. Another good practice is to just go through your beans or your peas and pick out any that just don't look right. If they float, you want to take those out, or if they're, I don't know, they just don't look good to you, just take them out. It's not worth trying to can something that's subpar. I found a little tiny black bean in this bag of kidney beans. That's not a big deal at all, but it is very common to find little stones or little pebbles in with beans. So you definitely want to take stones and pebbles out of your beans before you cook them. I just gave them another quick rinse and then kind of just stirred them around to get the excess water off. I have a brand new box of jars that I am taking out. I will take the lids and rings off, get the jars washed, and get ready to roll with my beans. In each jar, I'm putting roughly half the jar full of beans. I'm sure there's an exact science written down somewhere, but between a third and a half is what I'm doing. I wanted to have a full pressure canner, so I decided to do a bag of black beans as well. You prepare these using the exact same method. All beans, all peas, exactly the same. When I was opening these jars, I noticed that the lids were not really up to par. They had scratches on the inside where the metal was showing through, which will actually rust and corrode. And then also where the rubber seals were, the rubber part wasn't really thick and it was kind of like missing in places or thicker in other places. I decided, you know what? It's not worth ruining my canning for lids that are probably going to buckle and bend in the pressure canner. So I'll just use them sometime for just a lid on a jar that I'm not actually preserving food with. While Jesse's outside continuing to smoke some pork, I am going to stay inside and fill these jars with water and let these beans soak overnight. There are so many ways that you'll find to can beans, but the steps might be a little bit different here and there. What I like to do to make sure I have enough headspace is to put the beans in the jars, the dry beans, about halfway, and then fill with water and let them soak overnight. After you let them soak overnight, you'll see how much space they take up in the jar once they're plumped up, and that will give you a good idea as to if you need to take some out or if you have adequate headspace when you're canning. They've plumped up pretty well. And I think out of all of these jars, I'm going to take out just enough to make one more jar. So I'm going to give these a little bit more headspace. But first, I'm going to drain the liquid that they've been soaking in overnight, which is just water. I'm going to drain that out, put fresh water in, and some salt in all of the jars. And then in the kidney beans, I'm going to add some brown sugar or molasses, some dried mustard. Those are the seasonings that I like in my kidney beans. In the black beans, I'm going to leave them plain unless I might toss in a piece of dehydrated garlic with the salt. And normally, if I had some, I would add in some cilantro, which I don't have any. Oh yeah, I might add cumin in here too, because that's kind of how we eat our black beans, is like Mexican style. So that's what we're gonna do. It's super easy. You just have the beans, let them plump up overnight, drain the water, add your salt, seasonings if you like, and then move forward. couple of my barn quilts fell off the barn. It's been so windy, so I'm going to have to fix what we attach them to the barn with, and I'll hang them up later on. These are pint jars, and I am going to put a half a teaspoon of canning salt in each one of these jars. My box is getting a little difficult to get the salt out of, so see if I can make my life easier. I decided that I would go ahead and put a piece of garlic, dehydrated garlic, in every jar, because whether it's beans for tacos or beans for chili, garlic is only a benefit. We love garlic. This is garlic that we grew this year, and then I just dehydrated it. There. And like I said, I'm going to add about a teaspoon of cumin to each one of the black beans only. These darn things, right? And I knew I didn't have much left in this one, so I will go ahead and combine right to the top. Oh, it smells so good. It makes me want chili now. All right, half and one. Half and one. Half and one. I'll do it in this one too, in the mixed one. Half and one. Half and one. Perfect. I happened to notice I had a jar of beans up on the windowsill that was kind of hiding, so I've got to add garlic, come on, half a teaspoon of salt, I almost added cinnamon. And, oh no, we're not doing cumin. See, I'm getting ahead of myself. No cumin to that one. All right. What we are going to do, however, is add either brown sugar, light or dark, molasses or maple syrup, or a combination of 2 or 3 to our kidney beans, which currently have salt and garlic in them. That will be kind of the base for baked beans that we have in the future. That's generally what people would add to their baked beans is brown sugar, molasses, or maple syrup. So today I am going to do about a teaspoon of brown sugar to each jar of the kidney beans and just a squirt of the molasses. You don't really have to measure, it's kind of to taste, and you can always adjust. You can add more, I should say. When you put them in your pot, you can taste them then and see if you want it sweeter. The other thing that I'm going to add to the kidney beans will be powdered mustard, because I really love that taste. So we'll be adding that as well. If you remember back, I showed you the lids and the rings that came with these jars. I was not satisfied with the quality. And when you're working hard to preserve food that you've raised or purchased, and you're spending time and money on propane or gas or wood or whatever you're using, electricity, to preserve your food, you don't want to have it destroyed and ruined in the canner just because you didn't want to throw lids or rings out that you kind of knew that they weren't the best quality. I almost used them because inside I hate to throw something that looks perfectly good out. However, I just didn't trust them. I trust the ball lids that I've used forever. So I have some extra ball lids. I'm going to use those on the nice jars that I have, and I'm just going to use some older ball rings. There's nothing wrong with them. They are good forever. So now what we're going to do, we have all of the seasonings in with our beans. I'm going to add water to each jar and leave roughly an inch headspace, which means an inch of space between the food or water that's in there and the top of the jar. That's what headspace is how much room is between the product in the jar and the top. I've added the water, and now I'm just going to take a knife and go down along the sides of the jars to get out any air bubbles that might be in there. You don't want air bubbles when you're canning. Whoa, these beans are tight. They really swelled up and just filled that jar. So this is a good reason to use this knife. We don't want any air bubbles, and we also want the beans kind of free floating in there. If they're packed in there too tight, you might run the risk of having the jar break. I also wanted to mention I am using cold canning jars, room temperature beans, cold water, and a cold pressure canner with cold water in that. You want to keep everything at the same temperature, so similar temperature. So if you were pressure canning something that was hot and you were using hot vegetables or hot meat, you would put them in hot jars with hot liquid in a warm canner. You want to keep the temperature similar, and that will help reduce the risk of your jars breaking. Doesn't mean that they're not ever going to break, because they sometimes will. They sometimes have stress cracks in them that you don't even see. But for the most part, you always want to have the same temperature. Jars, canner, liquid, food. And that's that. So they look good. I'm going to wipe off the rims, put the lids on, and then we're going to get them in the canner. And another tip, if when you're putting the rings on, you have a ring that just doesn't feel right when you're putting it on, just don't use that. There's something wrong with it. Even if you can't see it, just swap out for another ring. Anyone that pressure cans or cans in general, you're going to have a ton of these kicking around. So if it looks damaged or it's just not twisting on correctly, just get a different one. It's not worth ruining all of your hard work. Cold water inside the cold pot. I've got one row of 6 in. I'm going to put on a separator plate and put 7 more. Keep in mind, although I am telling you most of the steps in how I can dried beans, this is by no means a step-by-step tutorial. This is just me spending some time with you in my kitchen. So if you do want a step-by-step tutorial, I am sure there are many out there that will show you absolutely everything you need to do. If you are a pressure canner, you could figure out how to do it just by watching me. But I would never want to lead anyone astray. I'm just kind of sharing my day in the kitchen.
And here we go. We've got to let the water come up to temperature. It's going to steam out this little valve for 10 minutes is what we want. Then we'll put the weight on, then we'll let it come up to 10 pounds of pressure, and then we will begin our time that we allow for our beans to pressure can properly. So it's snowing out and we've just come in from a day of multiple basketball games and other commitments and chores around the yard, but I wanted to show you the beans. They all sealed, which is great, and I don't know if you can see, but there's not a lot of liquid in them. So the beans on top are a little dry. They're fine. That's not going to bother anything. They're still really good. And I will just keep in mind the next time I do it, maybe to not have as many beans in there and just more liquid. It's just one of those things, but it's not a big deal at all. They all sealed. They all look great. And we now have what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 jars of beans that are ready to just open up, dump in a pot, dump in a few of them and make chili, or when it's taco or burrito night, just open up a jar and we're ready to go. I hope you've enjoyed seeing what we're doing around the farm these past couple of days, and we thank you so much for stopping, and we'll see you soon.